Hey, this is Steve from the Agile Mastery Show, and I'm delighted to introduce you to a very special guest indeed, a real heavyweight in the Agile field, a person I've admired for a very long time indeed. We had the pleasure of working together on a large-scale transformation project a while back, so I was really keen to bring him onto the show. He's built a wealth of experience in multi industries like manufacturing, financial services, retail, FMCG, sports betting, telecommunications, news media, and that's just to name a few. Right, this is like a massive back catalogue of companies and industries that you've worked in. It's a smorgasbord of agile coaching skills with over a decade spent helping teams, product leads, and executive leaders in reshaping their organization to adopt and adapt agile practice. A thought leader, an international public speaker, and for the past few years has moved into the AI space with his company Agile.ai to bring his vast knowledge of agile into this heavily disruptive field to help organizations to adapt and keep pace. I am really excited to get into the conversation. Ade Shokoya, welcome to the Agile Mastery Show.
Hey Steve, thank you very much. Like really a pleasure. Being somebody that also I have a lot of respect for when you put out the offer or invite to be on there, straight away I'm like, yeah, 100%. So really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Good man, good man. Well, Ade, tell me, how did you get into Agile? What was the shift in your career? How did you get into it?
So it was interesting. So when I graduated from university in 2001, I graduated with a first class degree and in information systems, and as a result of that I got put on a government scholarship program. So basically it was a program that they had for what they considered the top 10% of graduates in the UK at the time. And then also as part of that I got a scholarship to do a PhD, so it was all covered. And then whilst doing the PhD, I was doing lean manufacturing. So that was my first exposure to lean ways of working. You don't have to call me doctor because I mean, halfway through, I figured that this is not really what I want to do. So I stopped it. But what it led me to do, because so I came from a personal development background, a coaching background, counseling background before I went to university. And so to me, I was asking the question, well, okay, lean manufacturing, I get all the concepts around it, but like to me, it's too much about machines. Where do people come into it? I like to interact with people. And then that's what led me into the AI space. Um, just, I mean, then it was still quite a new type of mindset, a new way of working. The Agile Manifesto just come out around that time, and so that's when I kind of pivoted into there, started looking into it, and the more and more I looked at it, I'm like, okay, this seems interesting. It takes the concepts of lean, which are applied to business, but for me, it was more, and it is then used to help human beings to interact, do more, and be more.
So it's true, isn't it? Way back when, and people were talking of agile as being a process change, but actually, it's all about the people, isn't it? That's what it is, and that's where. Do you think that that's where people or organisations trip up a lot? Is that they misunderstand it as being a process?
100%. I mean, I think so. I think there's a number of reasons why that happens, and maybe we can delve into that as we continue our conversation. But I mean, I know people say that out of the four values, they're not necessarily more important than the other. But for me, the one that I always to hold on to, which is always my starting point, is the individuals and interactions, other processes and tools. And like I
Mm,
say to people, agile, waterfall, any process, AI, anything will work if you take human beings out of the mix, but you can't. So fundamentally, you're talking about humans, right? You're
yeah.
talking about complex adaptive systems. And so, in order to get these things to work, humans are key to it. And to your point, yes, I think many bought into that idea, which is then also the whole thing around methodologies and framework, that it's a prescripted thing. And then if you do this, and that's why we saw a lot of that copy and paste. Well, I've seen it work over there, so I'm going to bring it over here. Well, no, you've got different people over here, mate. Just You got different context going on. Your system is different. Well, no, it works over there, so it's got to work exactly like this over here. So yeah, I think to your point, I think yeah, too many people bought into the fact that it's a process and decoupled it from the fact that it's actually about human beings creating something that works within a context.
It's like the safe model of just taking off the shelf. That's probably why it became so popular as a framework for organizations who are going to scale agile. They took it as a framework that they could just literally take off the shelf and just land on the you know, team organization as a whole, and it didn't work like that because that's how it was perceived. Is that they it was seen that because another organization had made it work potentially, that they were able to make it work here because it's literally it's something that they could literally just fit inside. Is that how you see it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, framework, methodology, agnostic. If you look at it fundamentally, again, we're talking about human beings, and human beings, for the most part, don't like change, right? And we begin to
Mm,
see this in the AI space as well. Many organizations, big organizations, are sometimes looking for the fix without change. Oh, I
mm,
want this thing to fix what I do and get me better outcomes, but I'm not prepared to change any of the fundamentals around it. We saw that with the whole agile thing, right? We'll just come in and do your agile stuff. We're not going to change how we interact. We're not going to change the way that we deal with people, remunerate people, set up our teams, or all that bits and pieces. You just come in, do your magic stuff, give us what we want, right? All right, don't ask us to change anything. That's
like
not the
Harry
deal.
Potter, bring your Harry Potter
Yeah,
wand in, do
yeah, and
your
I'll tell you some
magic.
stories about that as well. That was quite funny, and I think that's fundamental human beings because we're seeing it again with the AI type space. Lots of organizations are thinking, "Hey, AI is going to give me all the results that I want," not recognizing that all that AI would do, it will maximize or multiply what you've already got in place. If your processes already are bad, you're just going to get even worse processes quicker. Okay.
Mm.
If your input is bad, you're going to get some really bad results.
It's layering, isn't it? Look, we
There you
talked about
go.
this before, isn't it? It's layering. It's layering. If you've already got an existing challenge, a problem, if you're layering something on top rather than fixing the challenge, then you're just, and especially if you're scaling that, you're just going to scale the problem.
Yeah, but and then if you think about it, I mean, okay, so if we look at it from a systems point of view, what is an organization? It's made up of different departments. What different departments? They're made up of different teams, potentially. What different teams? Made up of different individuals. Look at the individuals and how we live our lives in general. Most of the time, we are looking for fixes in our life without fixing the underlying root cause. So all you're
Yeah,
just seeing is that at scale again in an organization. Why? Because it's human beings.
the deep rooted problems that need
There you
fixing.
go.
Let's go back to something you mentioned before, which I think is really, I think we can really explore that. You said that people don't like change. Now, the podcast is fundamentally for Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, and this is what we face all the time. We're coming into transformation initiatives, change programs, and these are the resistance is kind of one of the big obstacles that we have to help, and we have trouble and problems uh, actually being able to help in that if we're facing that resistance. What have you found? What's been your experience in that regard, and how would you manage that?
So I think quite earlier on in my career, I got caught up in the fact that, hey, these organizations don't want to change, people don't want to change, yada yada. I've got all the answers, so they need to do things my way. But I guess when I was able to get past the cognitive bias, and I think this is something we all got to ask ourselves is, well, how willing to change are we as the change agents? Many times we come with a prescribed, here's how it should do. And if they're not changing and adapting to us, they're in the wrong and everybody else should move towards us. What I found over time is, well, actually, and I've been fortunate and blessed to work in different organizations across different industries. When I can go into each organization with a let go of everything that I think I know and I've experienced before, let me go in here, then it means I could change and adapt my um, approach to the context. So some organizations you can go in, you can have massive change straight away. In some organizations, you've got to go along with the existing way things are and slowly but gently nudge it. In many ways, I say it's a bit like what's that? I forget that name. of that sport, Winter Olympic sports, where they got that bowling thing and then they got like the mop where they're mopping
The
in front of you.
curling, the
Curling,
curling.
right? Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes as scrum masters or change agents, that's what we've got to do. We've got to go with the flow and be kind of in front, just kind of slowly nudging to changing the way, right? And other times,
ensuring the path, right? Just trying to get clean the path.
there you go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which means sometimes we might get it right, and sometimes we might not. And other times it might mean that we are actually driving the car and steering it, right? But we got to know
Mm,
the context when to do that, when not to do that, because otherwise, and I've experienced that. Sometimes we go in there with that hammer,
mm,
and all we're doing is creating more resistance.
hmm. Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to, from what I've experienced, because certainly my mindset in the early days of coaching was about being a purist, and it took me a really long time to understand that and appreciate that I was part of the problem, because I was trying to enforce the change.
There you go.
And actually you find that you're building extra resistance as a result, because you're pushing people away
There you
by
go.
doing that. um, and you look around and wonder, why isn't it working? Because we're told that this is how it's supposed to be done. Why aren't they listening? Why aren't they doing the things that I'm trying to teach them and show them how to do it? And really, what takes a long time to really understand and appreciate is that I need to meet them where they are. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things. And if you look at it, here's the interesting thing. So if you look at like Kanban, right? That's one of the key principles. Start where they're at. Okay, we're the
Mm.
change agents, and we say start where they're at, start where we're at. We preach it, but then we go in there like, well, no, you got to come over here. This is how it is, and if you don't do it, you're wrong. Oh yeah, you guys don't get agile, and we can't. You know what I mean? So in many ways, we do that, and think about what we just said there. Both of what we just spoke about there is the realization of what we learn in a class on a 2-day course or even a 1 week course, whatever. It doesn't. It can only give you the groundings of some starting points. What we really learn is when we're out in the cold face of the doing. We had to
Mm.
go out to understand that even though we thought we had the right formula, that actually, if we didn't go out and communicate and meet people where they were, and that took experience, it's irrelevant. You can have the best formula in the world. No one's listening to you. You're going to have no impact. Right. And it's all about impact. And so, yeah, we had to learn in that way to actually slow down. Actually, what's the common denominator here? Ah, me. Okay.
Mm.
What's the common denominator about me? Ah, my mindset and approach. Okay, cool. So that's the thing that we can control. And when we start changing how we approach that, meet them where they are, then we can understand that, okay, the what I learned says that it's a linear process like this, but these guys all the way over there, so there's going to be no linear here. How do I even start to even get them to the starting line? That's even another whole conversation before we even start talking about doing what we think they should be doing. And even then, how do I take some time to step back and observe what this context is, so then I can figure out actually what do they need, as opposed to me coming here, here's what they should be doing.
Yeah, that's it. That's it, isn't it? I mean, so what do you think? Because if that's what we're taught, if we're taught the theory in the classroom, we're taught, early day Scrum masters, even agile coaches, we're taught that linear process. We're taught how to embed the frameworks, how to take on principles and understand values and things. What you're explaining there is that there's a real gap from that theory to actually what's happening in reality. So how do we bridge that gap, so that we're preparing our scrum masters and our agile coaches to actually go in and be the change agents that we're asking them to be, that can actually really evoke impact, to have real influence and impact with the organization. What do you think?
I think number one, that's a really, really powerful question. And number two, I think the key really is helping Scrum Masters understand that doing Scrum, once again, it depends on what level we're bringing them in. Because if you think about it, before it would be a case of originally, well, in the early days, it might be a case of the Scrum Master would come in and just be focusing on kind of the team level, or in some organizations, depending on where you're at, right? But more and more, Scrum Masters are change agents, and they were always intended to be change agents. So I think where we could have done better is, well, we take them and show them Scrum. Scrum is just one aspect of the outcome. The outcome,
Mm,
if you're trying to be a change agent, is how do you change an organization, change a team, change a project? Then change management needs to come into play. And so I
mm,
think there should have been a lot more focus on actually, here's only one part of the overall piece to get your outcome. This might be the tool or approach that you're going to use to facilitate that change and help them to get the results. But before that, here's what's involved. I mean,
mm,
for a while, like I said, it just similar on my journey. It took me a while to realize that actually, I can tell you a story. I remember one of my first jobs, and I love telling this in the training rooms. It's a story of when I got sacked. Okay, and that's because I went into an organization. I was still, fresh. AI, Agile was still fresh. I got it. I understood it. I thought this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I went into the organization, and I could see all the areas where Agile could help. And it's like, nah, you're doing this wrong. This is what you should do. Nah, you're doing that wrong. This is what you should do. Nah, you're doing this wrong. And within the first week of me being there, in the desire to impress, and obviously from a point of view of some need for job security, hey, they've just brought me in. I'm on a contract. I've got to show how what I can do. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. You should do this. This. You should do this. After about 2 months, they're like, "Thank you very much. Pack your stuff and leave."
yeah. I've been there. I did exactly the same thing,
There you go.
because you're forcing it, you're enforcing it, you're pushing, you know. Yeah. Um, so do we think that the training, the learning that we need to be giving Scrum Masters, Agile coaches is about business, to learn, help them learn business, help them to understand what they're helping to change from in order to change to. This is what we're going to. This is the utopia that we're going to help them to bring along to. But in order for us to be able to help them get there, we need to understand where they are now. And if you're coming in and being the one on the right side of good and going, hey, come over here, like you say, pointing out all the flaws, showing them exactly what they should be doing, but then wondering why aren't they listening? We should be we should be training our Scrum Masters to understand what it is that we're helping them to change from and move away from, and really understand that position, see and understand where they're at.
Yeah, look, I think so, and I guess look, there's a whole 100%. I mean, I think there's a whole bigger conversation that could be had around how we train Scrum Masters. Okay, if we think about it, we talk about from an agile point of view that we are focusing on outcome rather than output, right? Which is how do we get people
Mm-hmm.
to an outcome? And then the question is, do we actually enable and arm people who may come into a Scrum Mastery course with no knowledge of Scrum or Agile, and then 2 days later we give them the title of a master?
Mm-hmm.
Then really, without enabling them with all the things that are required, as we've been discussing here, to even achieve mastery. I mean, think about it like this way, right? It's said that you need 10,000 hours of something in order to be a master. I don't know how many 10,000 hours you can get in a 2 day in a room. I worked that
Mm-hmm.
out to be roughly, you'd be lucky if you get 18 hours out of that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so then once again, it's then what is the outcome that we're really trying to achieve? And once again, we won't go into to this to you. What's the real outcome we're trying to achieve when we're saying that we're trying to certify people? What is the real outcome? Are we trying to really enable them with the skill sets to be a master? Therefore, what's our acceptance criteria around that? How does that really sum up if mastery requires 10,000 hours, but after 2 days we're going to say you're a master? And to your point of the discussion, we're not actually giving you the bigger picture of here's all the things that you need to learn and understand about humans, psychology, business, context, systems thinking, um, organizational politics, all of the things that are going to enable us to get the outcome, depending on what the outcome is. If we're not enabling in that, then what is it we're doing? So I think there's quite a bit that could go into that, to be honest.
It's massive, isn't it? It's huge. It's almost like we are setting them up to fail, right? In some cases. that we and it why isn't it understood like that? Why are we not thinking along those lines, do you think?
Look, I think we both know the answer to that. If we are going to be honest, let's look at it. Like I said, right, the time it takes to become a trainer and the process it takes to go to become a trainer, right, is quite vigorous. But the time it takes to become a master that goes out and
Mm,
delivers all this stuff is just 2 days.
yeah.
Figure it out. So you can figure that out. And I'm saying if we look at it from a product delivery, if we start looking at a product delivery and a validation and quality checks and all of those type of things and the outcome, well, once again we can look at it and ask, well, what really happened there?
Mm, yeah, it is. It's really down to the initial training then, isn't it? Um, let's pivot it slightly and look at the more broader picture of organizational change.
Mm.
We mentioned about Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, but let's look at more organizational change. Um, the basically because well, so or some organizations now on their second, maybe even third iteration of agile transformation. Some have just given up. Um, what's going on there? Do you think what is happening? What's in your experience and what you've seen? Why is it that some organizations just don't seem to be getting it right? What's the problem?
Again, look, I think it's hard to put it into one bucket, right? I think if you think about it, right, organizations are complex, adaptive, right? You have organizations and people have been in different places and they've seen agile in different forms, right? Some good, some bad, some what is that thing you've got there? It's not agile, right?
Mm,
And so you've got that conflicting. You also got the fact that, and this is something that we saw quite earlier on, which in many ways, again, I feel that as a community, we didn't necessarily do it a good justice, which is we didn't have clear measurable outcomes that people would actually really measure the outcomes of the money that they were spending against. A lot of times, and I've heard it said, and the amount of times I've had to cringe, well, we're doing agile, we can't tell you anything. And you're just like, oh, that's right. And
yeah.
so organizations have spent quite a lot of money trying to get stuff done. Some, and I know you've been in organizations like myself who have gone from consultancy to consultancy. Those
Mm,
guys didn't work.
hmm
Let's bring in these guys. That didn't work, and then let's bring in these guys. So I think, look, there's a number of different things. Some organizational cultures are not set for it for that type of change. Some of them have been bought in or potentially sold that, hey, you don't need to change anything. Just put this on top, and then you're good to go. Um, and then sometimes it's just like, well, like we discussed, if we haven't enabled people to understand the end-to-end change, and all we're sending them into is to go and build a house. I'm only going to give you a hammer because all you need is a hammer to build the house. Then that house is going to be a bit wonky, and then after a while, people are not going to be happy with what you've delivered. It's just as simple as that.
But you're building a house on ground that is already problematic, and you're not clearing the space, the field to be able to the you're building a house, a good house on top of a bad house, essentially, or bad ground. I
Sometimes
don't
you're
know.
even yeah. Sometimes you're building a bad house on bad stuff as well. So we gotta look at the whole thing, right? So I think there's just a
Mm,
number of different things in there. And I think for some organizations, it's like they're so far invested into it that they have to keep on just pivoting forward, right? And like you said, after a while, and I've been to a number of organizations. I mean, the last few that I've been, which is when I started to move away from the industry. I mean, some of the things that senior management was saying to me, I could get it. I could get it. Like, well, what are we paying? What are we paying? What are you guys for? What was it? What was it we were getting? Or actually, why do we need you? Show me
mm.
what's changing. This is how much we're spending. Just give me some clear, tangible results, outcomes. Give me something that I can go back to the board and say, yeah, show me what's really changing.
And it's so you think it's the messaging, the understanding of what they're buying into, the lack of return on investment, the lack of or the lack of understanding on return on investment. This is going to take time, um, and being giving a bit of a vague picture of what the future is going to be like for them, or what and how the journey is going to be like for them, how disruptive and complex and difficult, and the support elements that will help them get there. Um, mm.
Yeah, but if you
Now,
think about it, right, when we talk about it from even a delivery point of view, right, we will say, hey, part of the product owner's role is to clearly manage stakeholder expectations, some very clear acceptance criteria with very clear deliverables at very clear iteration points.
mm,
So then start applying those. If you all everyone steps back and looks at the transformations you've been involved in, the ones that work well are the ones that I've worked on where there is a regular pulse like that, where there's a regular
mm,
pulse of some form of value delivery, incremental change, and clear communication, managing expectations. The ones
mm,
that I've been at that haven't worked is these big promises, and then a lot of running around to try and make stuff happen to create some form of something. And then even
mm.
then the client's like, well, no, this is not on how this is not really moving my dial. This is not really valuable. Okay, and then there's more flurry of action. So I'm saying is all we got to do is just look. If we're agilists, let's look at the principles, and agile should be at scale, right? So what we're doing at the team levels, do we do that at transformation level? That's really the question. And then where we're inspecting, adapting, and retrospectively and learning, and ensuring there's clear acceptance criteria and holding ourselves accountable against that as well.
So start small. Why we spend all of this time in refinement sessions breaking down requirements for our customers. Why aren't we doing that with the transformation? Breaking down, focusing on acceptance criteria, focusing on um, focus. Oh, I've lost my earpiece. Focusing on acceptance criteria, breaking down, specifying on the value outcomes so that there's a clear benefit, and demonstrating it and retrospecting it all the way through. Yeah,
How
it
many, how
sounds
many,
so
how many programs have you
so
been on that
simple.
have done that? Be honest. How many programs have you been on that have done that?
The one where it really worked like that was where I had proper buy-in, um, and the structure was set from the ground up. It was done very organically, and we started small. We started with a small leadership team, with a handful of product teams, and we structured it. We worked with the leaders. We had uh, real proper understanding of what outcomes we would work with, and that's how it was done. It was done as an incremental, slow pace, very small, before we actually scaled it. That's how it works. Yeah. Why isn't it done like that all the time, Maddie? Why? You know. You're doing a lot of work in the AI space. You mentioned before this. That was where you really came from originally. Um, how is it going to be different now? Or what needs to happen for it to uh, to actually help organizations rather than it being another thing to layer on top? What do you think? What sort of risks do you see with AI coming in now as a disruptor?
So the risks I see are similar to the same risks that I see and experience with Agile, which is so if you think about it, in the early days of Agile, lots of organizations didn't want to do it. They didn't want to change from what they was doing. But when they started seeing that other people were doing it, then it was like that fear of missing out. Oh, I've got to get on the bandwagon. I've got to be doing Agile as well, without fully understanding what it meant, what was required, etc. And a lot of them, like we said, would just then think that this was the magic wand. In fact, I'll tell you a story once. So one time for a large client, I was part of a large transformation, yeah, couple £100 million at that stage. I think in the end it went over about £1 billion that they spent on that transformation, large global transformation. And I remember as part of the initial starting point, the first starting point was to do some form of training. So training teams on how we're gonna do. And there's 1 week, we'd do 1 week training blocks, right? Really immersive training and type of stuff. And I remember that at the end of it, the champion that they had put forward, who was somebody who didn't really know anything about Agile, but he was the champion. Anyway, But then the first thing he said to us when he came out is, "Oh yes, I hear that the people have all done training now." Like, yeah, we just finished the training. So great. So that means everyone's going to be agile now. Like, it doesn't work that way. And then after a while, I'm like, yeah, my running joke was like, I was just gonna come in dressed as a wizard with my wand,
Mm,
just gonna,
mhm.
boop, there
Harry
you are,
Potter.
you're agile. Boop,
Mhm.
there you're agile. And there you go, everyone have it. Because that was some of the things that yeah. What to your point? What I'm seeing is organizations now thinking, well, first of all, it was high. Now organizations want to just get the tech. It's tech driven rather than business driven. Not thinking about the implications. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be considered in terms of the impact on humans. Once again, change management. How do you overcome people's fear, resistance of AI? How do you even look at from a point of view the fact that what about governance and security and ethical biases and all the other things? What about the implications of bringing in AI in? Have you even looked at your processes to understand the key points where AI needs to come in? And actually, is AI going to fix this? Or just like with Agile, do you need to fix this first before you then put an AI layer on there? These are the type of conversations that need to be had. In my company, Agile AI, we have a framework which is called AIM: analyze, implement, monitor. We always start off by analyzing, which is actually, let's understand what you've got here. What have you got going on here? How do you do business? What are some of the key touch points? What are some of the constraints around it? Where are the potential risk points? Where are some of the things that actually need to be fixed manually in your processes before we even start adding AI? And even the areas where we should add, or where we can add AI, should we even add AI? What's the business case behind it? Is it feasible? What's the ethical impact? What could potentially go wrong? All of those type of things need to be managed. And so I think a lot of organizations, they're not necessarily looking at it like that. Then once again, it's just they're throwing AI at it. Let's get rid of people. Let's throw AI into it. Let's automate this. Let's automate that. And then the thing goes and says something really foul, and everyone's going, "Oh my gosh, it just that's just hit our brand."
So we're in danger of making the same mistakes as we did with Agile, just layering on top this powerful, hugely powerful system or the technical product onto existing bad processes and behaviors and cultures, just like we did with Agile. So how? I mean, it's almost like companies are because it's seen that we've got technical experts, we can just get on with it, and it's like organizations are starting to run before they can walk with it and really take a step back and go, we need to keep up with this organization or this our competitors because they're already on the bandwagon, like you say. We've got to get on with it. We can't hang around. We can't take a pause here for breath and look at what's going on under the hood and look at what we need to really fix before we can layer on AI. Okay. So what's the solution? There? What would you if you're working with a company now? What would you how would you help them?
I mean, one of the ways that I help organizations is first of all helping them to put on brakes and totally understand
Hmm.
that some organizations they're too far in flight for them to stop, right? So it's a bit like that kind
Hmm.
of analogy that we share that sometimes we have to change the engine mid-flight. And then rather than
Hmm.
trying to change all the engines mid-flight because then you're going to crash, then it's like, okay, cool. What engine can we isolate and work on?
Hmm.
Which might mean we slow down a little bit, but let's
Hmm.
identify what your key strategic goals
We're
are.
not going to
Then let that
crash.
keep in line. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that keep going. Let's work on this here. Let's have some clear outcomes that you can see from this small piece. And then it's also then easier for them to start mentally. And if we can then strategically say, okay, we've isolated this piece, we fixed that. You saw how bumpy it got. We've learned from that process. Now we're going to move on to the next piece, and each time, and then we can also at each stage show the measurable outcomes. Okay, here's how you was flying before when you weren't touching nothing. When we optimized this little bit, we saw this small piece of change. Okay, and the rest of it is like this. Now that we're moving on to the next part, so it's like that whole black box approach, which I've used in a number of large scale organizational transformations as well, whereby you isolate a small part, you work on that, have its own little ecosystem as best as possible, but a small part, and then you can then demonstrate very clearly back to senior management, board, and everybody else that hey, in this isolated piece, here's the benefits that we've got, here's the lessons that we learned, here are some of the variables that we manage, just like you do with a scientific experiment, right? You go into a lab. If you think about it, one of the clients I was working at, many of your listeners will know that That's where that term came from in Lloyd's, because I was part of the team that originally created the first operating model that was in Lloyd's, and then I was back there to deliver the training. And that's why the term lab was used to talk about at scale, what were known as release trains, to make it clear this is an experimental space. This is where we go in and isolate it from the rest of the organization to play around and manage certain variables so that we can get outcomes. And the rest of the organization operated as it needed to operate. We started with about one lab, then two labs, then three, then four, as we could prove it, and then you scale it up like that. So again, with AI, I think that's the key, is helping organization. Where can you find just one area, one small area, go in, let's make a difference there. Let's see how the system reacts as well from a systems thinking point of view, so we can see the things we don't know until we start playing around with it. Let's isolate, fix those things first. Then let's look at then scaling a little bit, because once again, in the systems thinking environment, even if you scale a little bit, you're going to introduce some more kind of variables that are going to have an impact. Um, yeah, like we always say, look, if you scale too early, if you've got dysfunction at one level and you scale too early, then you're just scaling a whole heap of dysfunction. It's a lot more expensive to fix. Hence, some organizations are multiple iterations of agility trying to unfix what they've scaled and made bad already.
So the key message really is just to slow down again, slow down, and take stock rather than trying to keep up with this hugely rapid market driver. And with that though, is that not? Do you? I mean, you're the coalface of it. Are you seeing that there's resistance to that method? Like it's clear we've seen it before. We're in danger of making the same mistakes. Are you seeing? Are you hearing from leaders, senior leaders, going, say, look, we don't have the time to do that because our competitors are just going too far ahead. We have to just take a risk, take a punt. We haven't got the time.
I mean, look, again, like we said, this is really about human beings, right? If you look back through
Mm,
human society, right? How many lessons have we ever learned in
mm,
terms of human society? We don't really. We're really not that great at learning lessons. Let's just
mm,
face it. That's human beings in general. Even if you look at
mhm,
the AI race outside of organizations, right? The race for super intelligence and the
mhm,
whole concern around what are we creating here? Where's the governance? Where's the ethical? What's the common thing? Well, we can't slow down. China's speeding up. Those guys are speeding up. We can't slow down. Oh, let's just manage that when it comes. Okay,
mm,
so top down. It's a top down.
mm.
It's human nature. Well, you can look at it for both ways: top down, bottom up. Humans beings just we tend to do that. So yeah, I think it's just human nature. And to your point, I think organizations have got to start realizing it's not so much because the whole idea of slowing down scares them. And people
Mm,
think from a cognitive bias, they think in terms of holes. So it's like, well, I can't slow down everything, which is we got to accept that's a reality for some of them, right? People's jobs on the line, shareholder interest. There's a lot of other factors which mean actually this makes sense, but guess what? My context doesn't allow for that. So like, again, that's why I like to use the word isolation. Well, where can you identify something really small that's
mm,
not really going to slow down everything, but allows you to fix it while you're moving still, and as a result of that, get a benefit from that, and then maybe have a case where you recognize that actually maybe I can quickly slow down here because I know I'm going to really pivot, just like we see in Formula One racing, right? They work it
mm.
out. They're doing all the diagnostics. They know the ideal time when they can stop and then shoot off because they know that they're not going to lose time overall. It's like, how do you get yourself to that point, really?
Yeah, I love your analogy about the airplane. If you can isolate one engine so that you can actually work on that while you're not going to crash, you're going to keep the airplane going. But excellent, yeah, really interesting. So, what about let's take it back slightly to Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. There's a lot of fear around the role of Scrum Master in terms of the advent of AI. For reasons I don't know where this has come from. The role is very much people based. So how has it come to the point where there is this fear? There is fear generally in people's roles generally. So, what advice would you give to Scrum Masters with Agile coaches in terms of how AI is going to help them, and the mindset that they need to get into in order for AI to be a help and not a disruptor for the role.
I think that look, I think that's really, really important, and it's a really interesting thing. I think fundamentally, lots of human beings across different roles are getting scared about AI because, in many ways, they're beginning to ask the question, well, it can replace us. And I think there's two ways you can approach this, right? I think one is this. So I like to be very outcome driven. What's the purpose of a Scrum Master? Okay, to enable, support a Scrum team. Okay, just making it very simple, right? What's the purpose of a Scrum team? Well, to increase the amount of value that's delivered to an organization, usually through development of some form of product or service. Okay, great, cool. And what's the purpose of that? To increase the outcomes or project or strategic goals or income from an organization. I guess if you take a deductive point of view and look back at it as well, if the outcome really is to increase the overall money that an organization makes, or even if you start from the bottom, if the goal is to increase the product team's goal is to increase the value of a product, then you have an AI system that can do that and increase the product value. So now you can prototype, you can spin up a prototype using Lovable, Replit, all of those in like what, minutes. Okay. You can create a whole backlog of stuff in minutes. You can do all of those things. And now with vibe coding, in fact, you can actually code some of these things in, less time than before. Then you're rightfully start asking the question, then where is the value in the structure that we have around agility as it currently stands? How does that come into play? And so I would say there's a couple of things here. I think one, as change agents, and this again, this is goes back to the whole kind of continuous improvement and change agents. Agilists should be already making the switch and flipping and recognizing that things are changing. I'm seeing it in a lot of forums, and I saw it for quite a while, if I must say it, which in many ways it's like, wow. It's like people were trying to hold on to agile space and not accepting that it's changing. It's just changing. It's been changing for the last few years. We're now beginning to see it, and everyone can value that for themselves. We used to be in a job market whereby actually you could leave one job and have another job the next day. Now some people can't get a job anymore. So start reading the signs, start then changing and asking yourself, how do I add value using AI? We're also moving into an age where before with agility or some of the non-AI type stuff, we could have long lead times between value being seen. Oh, don't worry, we're working in this way, we're working in iterations. Yeah, at the end of this release cycle, you'll get to see XYZ. You're now moving to a place where actually within a day somebody can demonstrate some form of real value, tangible value. Okay, whether it's a prototype, whatever. So I would suggest that people start taking that mindset if they've got that and those key principles, and then asking yourself, how do you augment or maximize your value to your client using AI? How do you use it to understand systems thinking? How do you use it to understand context even before you go into retro to say, okay, this is happening here, this is here, here's the context that we're in. Help me come up with the right retro for this context. Here's the feedback I got from it. What experiments should we be running to create some demonstrable outcomes and improvements in the team and our delivery? Okay, we've tried this. This didn't work. What else would you suggest? All of that type of stuff is what people should be using AI to do to crunch through the data in ways that we can't as human beings.
Or we can't at pace as human beings, and and
100%.
and, and use that analytical really to help out the analysis of that data. So it's really to enhance the role. It's like we there's certain aspects of the role of Scrum Master, of Agile Coach, that you cannot replicate digitally. That
Correct.
you can the people interaction, where the culture, the sort of deep rooted psychology, all of these kind of things, and we need we need to understand how AI can really enhance the knowledge, really understand these things much to help us understand them much clearer, so that we can actually grow in the role rather than actually go, well, AI is going to take my role completely. That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I know people say, oh, agile is dead. You hear this all the time. It's like incredible. It's clickbait kind of social media type stuff, but fundamentally, it's really about how AI can enhance and be a help to us. That's how we should be looking at it.
Yeah, and I think that whole agile look, once again, it depends what you mean by agile is dead. I think what people are really referring to is, and this is really what impacts. I'm sure most of your listeners, whether agile is alive or not, it's the golden era for agilists in the agile space has gone. Okay, the
Hmm.
days of high
Yeah.
rates and you know
Mm.
easy getting into jobs and then high demand is not there. Once again, I think also people got to start looking at the market conditions as well. There are
Mm.
way more Scrum Masters and Agile coaches than there are opportunities for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So forget whether it's alive or not. Is the question is, unless you are a super rich person, you're just doing it for fun. Can you survive over this still, and in a meaningful way, or in the ways that we used to? And then people can just use their own personal evidence to answer that question, yes or no. And then the next question is, well, what should I be doing? And then yes, so I think there are going to be fewer opportunities available for it's not going to be a mass market anymore. It's going to be narrowed down. To your point, some things cannot be done by AI. But what you going to end up doing is you're going to end up having some very efficient Scrum Masters and Agile coaches who will successfully be able to manage multiple teams and get real impact and outcomes because they're augmenting and using AI. So it's not AI instead of humans, it's AI plus humans. And I think once again, which is what we're seeing across all the areas of the AI space, is simply this. There's a difference between people who use AI to do stuff, but they've got no experience. And we can see that clearly now because you can get AI to do stuff. If you haven't got the experience, you don't even know what you should be asking it to do. Now we're going to start seeing the people who've got real experience on the ground who are going to then know, like you said, to be asking and using AI for all the right things, to do the right analysis and the whole pipeline that enables us to go in and do the Scrum and do the thing, recognizing it's not really about Scrum, it's about the outcomes. It's not really about Kanban, it's just about the outcomes. And there's a whole heap of other things that go together to create those outcomes beyond Scrum, which are, like we discussed before, group dynamics, human behavior, psychology, systems thinking, change management. And you'll be able to use these tools if you know those concepts and those key principles to help speed up what you're doing, to identify patterns and identify experiments you can run to help them to move the dial in a tangible way that they can say, okay, cool, we see that improvement there. We see that that's working better. Okay, yes, yes.
I think that's a really good point to be finishing up on there, Ade. I think just helping Scrum Masters, Agile coaches to really understand how they can utilize AI in a way that's going to help them to keep pace, just like organizations need to understand it better to keep pace in the market. Scrum Masters and Agile coaches the same. Ade, it's been a real pleasure having this conversation with you, and
Likewise.
some fascinating insights and understanding, and there's a few takeaways from me, and hopefully people can really understand and sort of get a real picture of some of the things they can be working on. Tell me where can we find you? What sort of what how can people connect and understand what get some more insights from you.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you can catch me on LinkedIn, so Ade Shokoya. So just you catch me on LinkedIn. Also at my website, so Agile.ai. That's where I've put a link into the chat as well, where you can also find out a little bit about more about myself and the services that we currently offer in the Agile space. And then also, I'd like to just offer up this tool as well. So it's AgileGPT.Ajyle.ai. So in effect, this is a platform which I created, which is trained on Agile, so all the best type of practices, frameworks, all the thinking. So it's a specialist in the Agile space. In there's only over 21 different assistants covering everything from product ownership, user story generations, retrospectives, team collaboration, continuous improvement, systems thinking, management, cultural change, all of that. So once again, this could be potentially for some people a place that you can go in. You got assistants in there who are trained on Agile. They understand Agile. They understand these wider concepts. And again, it's just you go in there, give it the prompts, and it will give you the right answer within the right context, and that will help you to be able to deliver a lot more value.
So almost like an agile PA
Well, yeah,
in your
yeah. I mean,
pocket.
it's like an Agile PA. I like to call it more of an Agile mentor in your pocket, because in
Nice.
effect, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
we don't want it to do
Hmm.
the work for us. We want it to augment once again what we're doing, because in effect, we've got to go out in the real world. So just take it in
Yeah.
there. It will help you to then structure. You give it context, say this is what's happening, and then it will then give you some ideas, suggestions that you then go out in the real world, and a step by step of what to do, what to try. Like I said, you can give it the context. You can even give it down to these type of personalities. I got this person here, got this type of personality. There's a conflict here. There's this type of culture going on here. What would you suggest? How do I step? How do I? It will give you all of that. So it takes into consideration all the wider piece.
To help enhance your thinking so that you can go and do your job a lot more effectively. Ade, excellent. Thank you very much, and I'll speak
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Really appreciate it. You take care.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.